Check, check, check. 1, 2. How's it going? Off we go.
It's 14 hours.
North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report, and we actually made it on the air today. Who says I can't learn stuff? Okay, everybody that was watching yesterday's show. That's fine, I got it. I'll take that. That's fine. But I want you to know I have commanded technology to my benefit right now. Okay, just so you know. I am not someone who typically implores people to not be informed, quote unquote, informed. But that is exactly where I am going to go with you today. Because there is a very frightening and scary and crazy thing going on. And you need to ignore it. It is called the January 6th primetime hearing. And you need to not pay any attention to it whatsoever because it is detrimental to this nation. And to be perfectly honest with you, I am absolutely sure that we need to completely ignore this entire thing. And the reason is because, like I said, it's just awful for us. It's not going to do any good. All this is a character assassination of Donald Trump. It is rendered absolutely valueless. It is irrelevant based on the fact that the only thing this committee has against President Trump is that he wasn't vociferous enough in demanding a peaceful response to the January 6th affirmation of the Electoral College vote following the 2020 election. With regards to the assassination attempt of Associate Justice Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court of the United States, with the current sitting president and other members of Congress, high members of Democrat leadership, doing exactly the same thing, this renders this entire exercise as nothing more than political propaganda, Leni Riefenstahl style. It's awful. Now, if I cannot convince you to not watch this travesty, let me at least explain what's going on. This, according to Chelsea Cox of USA Today, this is the news part of the news, facts, commentary, and debate that is the Wells Report. The House Committee investigating the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol holds its first public hearing tonight in prime time. Since its formation in 2021, the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, as it's formally known, and oh, by the way, does not have any opposing viewpoints whatsoever, interviewed hundreds of witnesses and subpoenaed almost 100 allies of former President Donald Trump, as well as other individuals and businesses deemed responsible for events surrounding the attack on the Capitol. The hearings will examine the evidence the committee gathered to answer a simple question: what happened that day? Who was involved in the planning and execution? How can future attacks be prevented? When will the hearings begin and end? What has the committee already learned? Here is what USA Today knows. The first public hearing is scheduled to begin at 8 p.m. tonight. Will be carried by the major networks and most cable news channels. 7 more hearings are scheduled over the next few weeks. Something tells me they are not going to be covered like this one. That's just a prediction. The January 6th committee is expected to hear testimony and unveil evidence collected over the past year to provide a fuller picture of how the plan to attack the Capitol got started, who was involved, and exactly what was going on at the White House that day. A final report is scheduled for the fall. Its mission is not only to learn new information provided by witnesses who appear before it, but to also share with the American public what its investigation has uncovered about the attempted insurrection. Now, typically in a congressional hearing, there are members of both sides, both political parties, that alternately ask questions of witnesses. None of that will happen today. The only Republicans on the committee were picked by Nancy Pelosi. The minority members include Adam Kinzinger and also and that's Liz Cheney. Sorry about that. She is the co-chair and minority member. Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. That's it. Everybody else is a virulent, leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American, fascist Democrat. Every single one. Multiple people interviewed by the committee, including Trump's children, Donald Trump and Ivanka Trump, might testify during the hearings. Jared Kushner, former aide to Trump and Ivanka's husband, would also testify. Former Justice Department officials Jeff Rosen and Richard Donahue are likely to be called to testify before the committee. The committee sought former Vice President Mike Pence's testimony. Members of Pence's staff, including his former press secretary, Alyssa Farah, and Chief of Staff Mark Short, have already cooperated with the committee. Former President Trump has tried in vain to block White House documents from the committee. In November, a federal judge declined to issue a preliminary injunction requested by Trump's lawyers to keep the records private on the basis of executive privilege. I wonder what would have happened if this had been a Republican select committee, a hit squad, if you will, that was investigating, say, President Biden. I wonder if there would be executive privilege then. The committee has already subpoenaed nearly 100 people, organizations with connections to events surrounding the attack on the Capitol, including some members of Congress. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy was subpoenaed along with 4 other House representatives. McCarthy failed to voluntarily cooperate with the committee's investigation, according to his subpoena. He was compelled to testify about his knowledge of the events before, during, and after the attack on January 6th. The committee has accessed hundreds of pages of Trump diaries, call logs, aides' handwritten notes in preparation for the hearing. So what does this mean? Well, this means that presidential executive privilege is dead. Trump fought release of the documents in court on the basis of executive privilege, but President Joe Biden waived executive privilege for the investigation, and the Supreme Court refused to hear Trump's appeal. So now we're in a brand new set of territorial meanderings in that a sitting president can revoke a previous president's executive privilege. The next Republican president will have a field day with that, if he has the guts. There's exactly one Republican president that I can think of that actually has those kind of guts, and that would be President Donald Trump. The National Archives and Records Administration, which houses the records, also discovered Trump had taken 15 boxes of White House records with him to Florida. The records must be turned over to the National Archives if Trump is found in violation of the Presidential Records Act. The Justice Department is investigating the handling of the records taken to Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. Of course, this immediately brings up, now, whatever happened to Hillary Clinton's secret server in her house in Chappaqua? I'm sorry, whatever happened to that? The January 6th committee asked Facebook, Google, and Twitter and other technology companies in mid-2021 to supply records on efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election results. The committee sought to learn more about any policy changes made or not made by the companies to address the spread of misinformation, violent extremism, and foreign influence, including decisions to ban content. Companies 4chan, 8kun, that's K-U-N, Gab, Parlay, Reddit, Snapchat, Telegram, the Donald.win, TikTok, Twitch, and Zello were also targeted by the committee. That's according to USA Today. CNN talks about how to watch the January 6th mess, which will happen tonight. And once again, I implore you to not do it. Please don't do it. Because it's a mess. It's anti-American. But then again, I just described the Democrat Party at this current moment. According to CNN, the House Select Committee investigating the attack on the U.S. Capitol January 6 will hold its first public hearing tonight and will reveal its findings surrounded on the insurrection. The 9-person panel has spent months investigating the insurrection, interviewing members of the Trump administration and President Donald Trump's inner circle, and reviewing messages sent between them. They will unveil an in-depth assessment of events leading up to the day Congress was to affirm Joe Biden's victory, the administration response to the violence at the Capitol, and what unfolded in the aftermath among Trump and his allies. CNN has previously reported the hearing will be a broad overview of the 10-month investigation and will map out subsequent hearings that are expected to cover certain topics or themes. The committee has promised that it will present previously unseen material documented January 6th, receive witness testimony, preview additional hearings surrounding the insurrection. The committee has announced that the hearing will include 2 witnesses, documentarian Nick Quested, who has filmed members of the Proud Boys, Capitol Police Officer Caroline Edwards, who was injured in the altercation involving members of the Proud Boys. It will begin tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It will take place in the Cannon House office building. You will be able to watch it. CNN will have anchor coverage by Anderson Cooper and Jake Tapper. The live stream of the January 6th committee hearing will be featured on CNN.com without requiring a login. CNN special coverage of the hearing will stream live on the CNN app, and live coverage with updates will be on CNN.com and CNNEspanol.com. Okay? So, what is next? Well, there's this op-ed piece that I think you probably ought to have some knowledge of. John Steinman and Ryan Goodman. They are opinion contributors, although I recall that Ryan Goodman also used to be a journalist. Americans who tune in for Thursday's tonight's primetime hearing about the insurrection on January 6th, will have a front row seat to one of the largest investigations ever undertaken by Congress. Okay, 9/11? Will our fellow citizens watch and listen to the facts, or will they channel surf and ignore one of the most consequential moments in our democracy's history? They know they have a problem. They know they have a problem with people watching this mess, because now USA Today is pleading that they watch it. Don't watch it. This needs to go down in flames. And if you're a Democrat, it still needs to go down in flames. Absolutely down in flames. Don't watch this. I have referenced Leni Riefenstahl. She was a German film director, photographer, and an actress known for her seminal role in producing Nazi propaganda. Leni Riefenstahl was someone who actually gave legitimacy through her work to the Nazi regime in Germany in the late 30s. All I can tell you is that we don't need that level of propaganda here. A propagandist, very similar to Leni Riefenstahl, an ABC News executive, is going to be handling the glitz and glamour and razzmatazz. What I want you to understand is that this is anti-American. Now, I'm interested in hearing what your thoughts are on this, by the way. You can chat with us via the auspices of Facebook, Twitter, also YouTube, and LinkedIn if I did it right. I may not have. Whatever you do, spend some time texting with me. I will be glad to make sure that you can interact with me. I will interact with you during the breaks. Okay? So this is where we stand. This is what we have. It is an absolute error in judgment by the American media and by Democrat leadership in the House to do this. I expect it will damage them poignantly, badly in the 2022 election. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. Okay. When Pelosi gets interviewed and all the documents from her, the mayor of D.C. and the Capitol Police all consider this bull committee actually trying to find some information. Yes, I definitely lost some weight. Only about, 40 pounds. I lost a bunch of weight. And I'm continuing to, in fact. I am not going to be a lard ball ever again. That is a fact. I think I can't ignore the committee's findings. I just there's no legitimacy here. There's no adversarial testimony to balance anything. Then watch it. Isaac, go right ahead. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I have a great friend who watches this broadcast and listens to it and has been doing so for years. And his name is Isaac Tate. Isaac has asked me, as a newsman, how can you ignore the committee findings? Well, first of all, I don't know what the committee findings are. I don't know that the committee findings, I do know that the committee findings are going to be based on incomplete information. Because we know this to be true. The people involved in this witch hunt against Donald Trump, Adam Schiff, for example, who is on the committee, we know that he had secret hearings in the cellar of the Capitol building in the skiff down there during Donald Trump's first impeachment investigation. We also know that before he would allow anybody from the Republican Party who at least were represented in that investigation, before they could spend any time on television, he would come out from the skiff and he would brief a friendly, biased mainstream media. Trying to get the other side out, Republicans had one hell of a time, and no one And no one whatsoever paid any attention except for Fox News. It was awful from a standpoint of actual news coverage. And then you ask me, and then you say, "Hey, as a news person, how can I ignore the committee findings? I am a newsman. This isn't news. This is propaganda." There's an irrevocable link between the committee's work and the mainstream media through the ABC News executive that is producing the thing. When you link the American media with American politics, you get propaganda. As a newsman, I will tell you that the only news story in this is that it is a live, prime time attempt to assassinate the character of a former sitting president. That's what this is. Isaac goes on to say, "You guys are patriots. There was an attack on the Capitol. We need to know who collaborated, and the former president's role. The former president's role comes right down to a speech on January 6th, where he said the exact same things that both Jen Psaki and everybody else involved in the White House said about the Supreme Court justices having their addresses made public by Ruth Sent Us and other pro-abortion groups, that they fully supported peaceful protests. President Trump called on everybody at his speech, at his rally outside the Capitol, to go over to the Capitol and to protest peacefully. Is that what happened? No. Are the support for peaceful protests on the part of Jen Psaki and everybody in the Biden White House, are they also responsible for this maniac who wanted to assassinate Associate Justice Brett Kavanaugh? If they are not responsible for this supposed assassin, then President Trump is not responsible for anything that happened during the January 6th insurrection. Period. By the way, there's also something else. These are also the same people that were wrong about the first impeachment, wrong about the second impeachment, and are now trying to re-impeach the second impeachment of President Donald Trump right now. And as I said, there are no adversarial points of view. There is no bipartisanship, in that there is no give and take from both sides. And that is simply not the case. That is simply not the case with every other congressional hearing ever. This is the problem that we have. Isaac goes on to say, Jeff Emerson says the results will be skewed and misleading. Correct. There are texts, emails, communications, records from the National Archives. There is primary source information that cannot be ignored. Sure, it can. Because I guarantee you that the context, the contextual aspect of everything that you're mentioning, texts, emails, communications, are going to be blown away because of partisan delirium. Once again, there's no other side. There's no defense. No defense whatsoever. 9 investigations and 8 hearings on Benghazi as needed. But ignore the January 6th news. People should report the news even if you don't like it. I am reporting the news. I'm reporting to you that this made-for-TV event on the part of the same people that screwed up both impeachments of President Donald Trump, Russia, all of these things now debunked. I am telling you that they are at it again, and what they report tonight will be equally flawed. 9 investigations and 8 hearings into Benghazi. Right. Yeah. Well, we know about things that happened in Benghazi that still have had zero result in accountability for the people involved. Zero accountability. Up to and including a ridiculous congressional hearing mess from Hillary Clinton, who said, at this point, what does it matter? They're dead. That defense was nerve shattering for me. You know, it's like the what would have happened with all those people in the Nuremberg trials if every single one of those Nazi officers that killed 6 million people had just sat there and said, what difference does it make? They're all dead. And oh, by the way, there's one other real problem with what we're about to see tonight. And I'm going to share that with you when I return. You are listening to the Wells Report. I'm glad you are here. Please stay put. There's more next. I will be right back. And he did it again. 30 seconds to spare. How cool. You are listening to the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. Thank you for being here today. We are talking about what is a definitively dangerous chapter in American congressional abuse. And that is tonight's supposed hearing regarding the January 6th attacks. I am going to tell you that I have been questioned by somebody on the chat room that you can interact with me with right this very moment, which was a very good question. As a news person, me, how can I ignore what is going on with this particular coverage tonight? In point of fact, I won't ignore it. In point of fact, I will be paying attention to it. As reviled as I am about this epic abuse of congressional power on the part of anti-Trump Democrats and a couple of anti-Trump Republicans, I will tell you it is one-sided. I will tell you that it is a propaganda piece from beginning to end. I will tell you that it will fail miserably in its mission, which is to not find out about what happened on January 6th, because there is no adversarial give and take by both sides. This is a one-sided mess. It is propaganda. Therefore, it is not news. The story here is that the Congress of the United States, as impaneled by only Democrats, are going to foist what they say is some sort of investigation without any kind of defense for the other point of view regarding what happened. It is incomplete on that basis right there. Then there is a question. There is something badly wrong with all of this. We have heard all the documents being grabbed. In other words, what they've done is they've gone into Donald Trump's personal diaries, National Archive information. They have set aside, along with the courts, any semblance of fairness in regarding this particular conference. But what they've also done is they have irrevocably damaged presidential executive privilege. The backlash will be swift on this. But here is the hypocrisy, as if there was any need for any more. The hypocrisy is this. There has not been a 10-month investigation, exhaustive, reaches out, outreach for texts, for background information on the BLM riots. This is a sole focus on one event on January 6th that was preceded by coast-to-coast violent insurrections on the part of BLM protesters in all the major cities in the United States. Nobody has gone through that. Nobody has gone through any of that. There have been no FBI wanted posters for the ringleaders of people that were burning down buildings, including federal ones, injuries of police officers in the thousands, as opposed to in the tens during the January 6th insurrection. There has been political, cherry-picked investigations and arrests of people involved in that January 6th insurrection. But nobody has been nailed because of BLM riots. Black Lives Matter, the actual organization, has only seen an influx of millions upon millions of dollars that was immediately used to purchase houses for the ringleaders of Black Lives Matter. Nobody's investigated that either. Why? I'll tell you why. Because this is a political exercise from beginning to end. It is both something that these people hope, will actually influence the 2020 elections, or the 2022 elections, and the 2024 elections. People have been saying that the American people will see right through it. I will trust the American people's judgment. Because, once again, I don't tell you what to think. I just tell you what's happening. And yes, I tell you what I think is happening here. But I'm also reporting the news, as you've just heard. I reported it from USA Today. I reported it from Fox. I reported it from CNN. All about this ridiculous propaganda mess. This Leni Riefenstahl-esque Nazi party propaganda by another name mess that's going to happen tonight. Somebody else says, when you know what it's going to be, why watch it? I avoid President Biden's speeches. Maybe it's because it's always word salad and not easy to understand. No matter what he says, White House staff members immediately come out and explain what he just said, no matter what it is. The President of the United States is being manipulated behind the scenes by what I have called the Presidium, a leftist cabal that is pursuing a leftist agenda, using President Biden as a hand puppet. And since the mainstream media refuses to get into exactly who those are behind the Biden administration, because they refuse to actually go in there and find out who's calling the shots. You know, like, for example, the people that turn off live video feeds of the president in action when he suddenly starts going off the rails. Who turns off the president of the United States? Who's making those decisions? What are those decisions based on? There's another congressional hearing that should be taking place. In the pages of USA Today, there is an opinion piece imploring the American people to watch it for the sake of the democracy. There is no sake of the democracy here because there's only one side. What they should be saying is watch it for the sake of the Democrat Party, which is different than the democracy. And in point of fact, the United States of America is not a democracy in the first place. It is a republic. The democracy part of this republic is the choice of the representatives that go to Washington, D.C. and represent us. I want to know who they're representing. Because I guarantee you this committee is not representing 74 million Americans who voted for President Donald Trump. So who are they representing? Who are these supposed representatives of the people of the United States? Who are they actually representing? You know what? They're not representing anyone. They're representing themselves. They're representing their political agenda. What they are doing is they are trying to figure out some way of quenching the blood loss of what used to be the Democrat Party, suffering mortal wounds at the hand of leftists and Democrat political sociopaths. That's the way I see it. And I got to be perfectly honest with you. Until there is until there's an actual congressional hearing about what happened to January 6th, all this is another attempt by the Democrat Party to damage this nation. We have constitutional rights in this nation, and so does Donald Trump. The American system of justice provides for both sides in an adversarial way to tell their stories, and then a jury of their peers, the jury of the peers, make a judgment. There is no other side in this. Certainly not during the fact. After the fact, there will be. But will there be national television coverage coast to coast for hours to cover the response to this? No. And this is where the evil, and I mean evil, combination of Democrat politics, leftist politics, and the American news media come together in a package of anti-Americanism we've never, ever seen before. And the saddest part about all of this, we're going to see it again. Because these Democrat sociopaths have opened Pandora's box. This is going to be a political bar fight for the rest of our lives. The brilliant Isaac Tate points out that this isn't a trial. This isn't a judicial, this is not a court hearing. It's political. Correct. It is political. It is a bastardization of the trappings of a congressional investigation with only one side doing the investigating and only one side of the question being investigated. I agree, there needs to be an investigation into January 6th. There absolutely needs to be. But it has to be a conventional one. It does not have to be what this is. They say that in a grand jury you can indict a ham sandwich. Well, that's what they're trying to do here. Because there is no adversarial give and take in a grand jury hearing. It is a presentation of prosecutors to establish probable cause and come up with an indictment. And that is exactly what's happening here. These very same people have impeached this president, President Trump, twice with aberrant, skewed, unfair practices in their investigations. Flat lies have been told about this president during his first impeachment hearing that were proven to be lies. Is there any coverage of that? No, there isn't. What we have here is we have Democrat politics that prove beyond any reasonable doubt that the Democrat Party has lost its American way. Isaac Tate says one side, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, are leaders of the committee. No, actually Liz Cheney is one of the leaders. Adam Kinzinger is a minority member. There are two minority members. You know as well as I do that during a real congressional hearing, there are nearly equal members of both parties. This is not equal. Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader of the United States House of Representatives, put names forward for this committee, all of them rejected by Nancy Pelosi. We know that Liz Cheney is an anti-Trump Republican. We also know that Adam Kinzinger is basically an anti-Republican Republican. Therefore, they are not Republicans. They are simple patsies. Liz Cheney has no more Republican credentials than Chuck Schumer. It is one side. It is one-sided. One-sided. And then, of course, you're saying for 3 hours during, Isaac is saying for 3 hours during the actual insurrection itself, all President Trump did was watch. Well, for an entire year, all the Democrat Party leadership leading up to the 2020 election did was watch America's cities burn. Nobody said stop. As a matter of fact, they said just the opposite. They said burn, baby, burn. Go right ahead. Peaceful protests right up to when the buildings began to burn down. Right up to when a little old lady was being beaten with a 2x4. Right up until police officers were being blinded by lasers and federal buildings set aflame. This is damaging our nation. And the mainstream media is gleefully going along with it. That's the way I see it. That's the way I see it. Isaac Tate says Liz Cheney voted 98% with Trump on his policies. Sure. Yeah. She voted on things that he was going to lose because she's astute. She's a politician. Just as Liz Cheney, during the Trump years, worked to have her political cake and eat it too, that's exactly what this committee is doing. And it's awful. You're listening to The Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. No, Isaac. January 6th was a peaceful protest. No federal buildings got burned. Nobody got kicked to death in the streets. Nobody looted anything, even out of the Capitol building. Nobody. Nobody was armed. Nobody fired fireworks at police officers or lasers or pepper spray. What are you talking about, man? You're saying they're separate issues and whataboutism? Whataboutism, huh? It isn't whataboutism to note that there is unequal representation in the American law and American politics. Unequal representation. I don't have any problem with people getting nailed for what they've done wrong. It just can't be a kangaroo court. And that's what you're defending right now, Isaac. You're defending this kangaroo court, this crazy stupidness. It's outrageous. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We're talking about these propagandist, Leni Riefenstahl-esque, anti-American political sociopathy, pathetically sociopathic, this quote-unquote hearing tonight. It's not a hearing. It's a slander. It's not just a slander on Donald Trump. It's a slander of the United States of America. And with the mainstream media a part of this proceeding, it's also libel. It's libelous of this nation. Isaac says $30 million in damage during the January 6th insurrection. 140 officers injured. Arrests made of men carrying guns. No. Oath Keepers 3%. Proud Boys pled guilty to sedition. Yeah. Yeah, after they sat in jail for months and months and months on end and were given a plea deal. That's what we call duress. You want to talk about $30 million in damage? Let's talk about the $30 billion in damages during the BLM riots. Egged on by the Democrat leadership and some of these very same people on this committee. Egged on. The president and his vice presidential candidate during the 2020 election actually bailing these people out of jail. Are you saying that the Republican Party should have had candidates, should Donald Trump have had the wherewithal to, say, for example, or the Republican Party leadership, should they have bailed the people who were taking part and arrested as political prisoners, by the way, for the January 6th insurrection? Should they have been bailed out of jail? Except they couldn't have been bailed out of jail because nobody was letting them go. And by the way, Isaac points out Ryan Kelly has been arrested, who aspires to be the governor of Michigan. He's a GOP GOP gubernatorial candidate in Michigan. What does that tell me? That tells me that the FBI is still playing politics. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later on. I know what I'm seeing here. I'm seeing a desperate attempt by a party that's about to lose their butt, doing everything it possibly can to try to grasp at some straw of damaging what will be an overwhelming defeat at the hands of the American public, the American voters in this next election. And they should lose. And they should continue losing until the Democrat Party returns. Until there is some semblance of respect for the American people, because that's what this all gets down to. Democrat Party refuses to believe that the American people elected Donald Trump in 2016. And in so doing, fired politics as usual in Washington, D.C., and these people just can't stand it. Just can't stand it. It is a mess. It's awful. David Jackson from USA Today says this, and it's illuminating. The most avid viewer of the January 6th insurrection investigation hearings will be Donald Trump, a prolific, mercurial watcher of television news during his 4 years in the White House, will be watching tonight as the House committee probing the Capitol attack launches primetime hearings. People who have spoken with Donald Trump in recent days have said the 45th president's viewing habits will not only shape, now listen to this, the 45th president's viewing habits will not only shape Republican spin on the hearings, they could influence the direction of this year's midterm election and the future of the Republican Party themselves. Two things, that's wishful thinking. And this supposed journalist is already characterizing a Republican response as spin. Is this an opinion piece? No. No, this is political journalism, quote unquote journalism. It's ridiculous. See, isn't that fantastic? You don't let anybody have any kind of adversarial input on the work of the committee, and then you characterize response as spin, denigrating it before it happens. That's shape or form. That's propagandizing. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. People are still being held in federal prison in D.C. Haven't been charged with anything yet. Yeah, what about habeas corpus? When it comes to the dissolution of presidential executive privilege, where's the Fifth Amendment for Donald Trump? In private conversations between he and his advisors, he is testifying against himself, according to this self-styled group of, quote, truth seekers, unquote. It's un-American. Simple. This is the Wells Report. Back in a moment. All right, I'll be right back. All right. Stay there, all 20 of you. Stay where you are. I've got to go do something important, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. Back again.
It's 15 hours.
Here's a song about a brown paper towel.
North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is coming. I have news. I actually got through to Frontier. Frontier Communications, America's absolute worst, and I mean worst, communications company. Theoretically, a technician is going to be here right behind me, in fact, making sure that we have telephone lines in this studio. Even that was a fight. And what we've got here is we're going to have an opportunity for you to call me on the telephone whenever you want at some point. So there's this guy on the chat room right now called Dirt Bike Event who has made a scurrilous, baseless, fact-free charge against me, which, in other words, reflects exactly what this supposed select committee on the January 6th insurrection is going to do tonight. Let me read this to you. This guy, Dirt Bike Event. I'm pretty sure that's not his name. Yeah, what's your name there, ghostwriter? Here's what he says. John David Wells actually advised the D.C. Klan Party to take zip ties to tie the wrists of Congress. Lock him, me, up too. I did nothing of the kind. I did nothing of the kind. The only thing I said about zip ties is this. A man was arrested for carrying them. Arrested. It's not against the law to carry them. Did he ever put them around the wrists of any congressional person, aide, advisor, representative? No, he did not. That's the only thing I said about zip ties. And yet, here is Dirt Bike Event, and I need to know your real name, accusing me of something scurrilous and completely wrong. I'm telling you, if you want to know whether or not this ridiculous Leni Riefenstahl event that's happening tonight is having an effect on this nation, there you go. The testimony that will be given in public has absolutely nothing to do with reality. Just like this guy. Perfect example. So this guy's a nut. You know, like the supposed assassin of Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, Brett Kavanaugh. Let's move on. Representative Jim Jordan, who was named to the Select Committee on the January 6th insurrection but was rejected by Nancy Pelosi, said yesterday there's real concern about an allegedly political climate at the FBI, leading some people to be retaliated against for, quote, disfavored political speech. Disfavored by who? Well, FBI leadership, that's who. Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio, he's a Republican, made the comments the day after sending a letter to FBI Director Christopher Wray alleging 2 instances in which FBI employees were punished for political speech surrounding the January 6th attack on the Capitol Hill. Quote, it's a real concern. I don't know how pervasive it is, unquote. I know how pervasive it is. It was enough that the director of the FBI was doing his absolute dead-level best to commit a coup against a sitting president chosen by the people of the United States. Lying, manipulating evidence, lying to the FISA court in order to try to bring the president down. All of it disproved in subsequent investigations. That's how pervasive politics at the FBI are. Jim Jordan goes on to say, but what I do know is we've had a lot of people, more than a half a dozen in the FBI, come forward to our Republican staff on the judiciary. They better keep doing it. I know FBI agents. Thankfully, many of them retired. One question that rings in my mind and always will is, quote, JD, what happened to my FBI? Just like the American media, it too cashed in its belief in trying to find truth and chose political sides. Representative Jordan's Tuesday letter alleged one employee's security clearance was suspended, as was his duty and pay for sharing views that, quote, the FBI was not being entirely forthcoming about the events of January 6th, unquote. That individual was a military veteran with a record of being highly successful in the FBI, according to Representative Jordan. According to the letter, lawyers for the individual called the FBI's allegations a distortion and a monumental leap from objective fact. So let me ask you this. If the FBI, by the way, found guilty of violating their own policies and procedures by the FBI Inspector General, nonetheless, if they're willing to do that with their own employees, just exactly what does an FBI case against you mean? Lawyers for the individual call the FBI's allegations a distortion and, quote, a monumental leap from objective fact, unquote. These are the people investigating violations of federal law. Is it good that someone could even come close to characterizing their investigative standards as, quote, a monumental leap from objective fact, unquote? The answer is no. No. Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio also said the FBI escalated an adverse personnel action against another employee over an answer on an anonymous survey sent to employees after January 6th. Representative Jordan told Fox News that these people are not the first to come to his team with similar allegations. He also said he has confidence Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz will properly handle the allegations. After Representative Jordan brought similar stories from other FBI employees to him previously. Quote, we have talked to the Inspector General relative to a previous letter about the two agents who were on their day off who were at the January 6th rally. But we have not yet communicated to the Inspector General what was made public yesterday. Jordan said, I've always thought Mr. Horowitz does good work, that he's professional. The FBI has not responded. They can't. They can't respond. They have been caught with dirty hands. And these people are investigating you. If you say things they don't like, they'll find something wrong with you. And what they'll do is they will come a-gunning. They will. The other day, they arrested a Trump presidential advisor who lives 50 yards away from their office. They waited until he was at Reagan National Airport. They clapped him in irons in public. Is that the kind of FBI you want? Is that the kind of FBI the American public needs? Because at the end of the day, the FBI is supposed to honor and enforce federal law, and what they're doing is now enforcing Democrat political policy. Is that the kind of secret police, which is what the FBI actually is that the kind of FBI you want? But there's more. I brought up moments ago that the people who were arrested for their part of the January 6th riot, they were immediately arrested, thrown in jail, and some still sit there without any charges being filed yet. Where's habeas corpus? Well, it's been rescinded. When was the last time that happened? During the Civil War. That, by the way, was a Republican president who did that. Here's what happened. Paul Egan, Arpan Lobo, and Josh Meyer from the Detroit Free Press. The FBI raided the home of a Michigan gubernatorial candidate, Ryan Kelly, today and arrested him in connection with the investigation of the January 6th Capitol riot. 5 months after the January 6th attack, the State Democrat Party of Michigan shared a video appearing to show Kelly, a Republican, standing outside the Capitol building during the riots after President Donald Trump's supposed, it's written here, call to action. They don't tell you what the call to action was. The call to action was to peacefully protest outside the Capitol. But apparently there can only be reporting on people suggesting, government officials suggesting peaceful protests if they're Democrats. So here we are, 5 months after the January 6th attack. The State Democratic Party of Michigan shared a video appearing to show Kelly, a Republican, standing outside the Capitol building during the riots. In the video, Kelly appears to yell, "Come on, let's go. This is it. This is war," unquote. Well, this is war. Okay, is that free speech? Yeah, that's free speech. I mean, if Chuck Schumer can say that the Supreme Court of the United States, with their decision-making, is calling down the whirlwind, and they will pay the price, and they won't know what hit them, what's wrong with this guy saying that? There's also something else. It may be a true statement that this is war. How do we know? Well, because Nancy Pelosi, right after the January 6th insurrection, turned the Capitol building of the United States into what could be a forward operating base, complete with razor wire and fence barriers and 26,000 United States troops. All those troops actually carrying actual weapons of war pointed at whom? That's right, pointed at us, we the people of the United States. We the people. Special Agent Mara Schneider, a spokeswoman for the FBI in Detroit, confirmed the federal agents used a search warrant. Kelly sells real estate. He was at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. when protesters rioted and illegally entered the building. He never confirmed he went inside, has denied doing anything illegal. But he is one of 5 GOP candidates on the August primary ballot for governor, after 5 other candidates were disqualified. So you suppose maybe the FBI has focused their attention on Ryan Kelly because he might have a chance to win? Does Ryan Kelly become the latest in the collection of political prisoners arrested by the FBI? Remember, these are questions. I am asking, is this the kind of FBI the people of the United States want? Yes or no? Tell me why. So Ryan Kelly, maybe the Republican frontrunner for the governorship of Michigan, arrested by the FBI. And I'm sorry, but didn't the FBI try to bring down President Donald Trump for supposed collusion with Russians trying to manipulate the United States election of 2016? Does this look like manipulation of the 2022 gubernatorial election in Michigan? Sure does to me. Sure does to me. You're listening to The Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 844-RADIO-US, 844-723-4687. You can say anything you choose to say about anything you choose in the United States, unless it runs afoul of leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American, Democrat political policy. Because if you do something like that, the FBI will come calling. They've done it with parents at school boards. They've done it with their own employees. They've done it with private citizens held without charge in Washington, D.C. This is a steaming pile of totalitarianism, and it's getting bigger. All of this is beyond the pale. And the useful idiots are coming out of the woodwork for whatever reason. In August 2020, Republicans said that President Trump and Roger Stone collaborated with WikiLeaks to release stolen DNC emails. And then goes on to say the Russia hoax was actually a Russian invention. No, actually, the Russia hoax was perpetrated by Hillary Clinton's campaign through Christopher Steele and Fusion GPS and the Democrat Party. And it was wrong. And while you're talking about President Trump and Roger Stone collaborating with WikiLeaks to release stolen DNC emails, by virtue of an absolute fraudulent FISA court claim, the Democrat Party had operatives being wiretapped, which is impossible because it was all with cell phones, in the Trump campaign and in the Trump administration, making Watergate look like a third-rate robbery. We are seeing a political party manipulate the people of the United States, thankful to the media for making it mostly possible, in an effort to destroy the American experience. That's what this is it. That's what this is about. And it's awful. And we, the people of the United States, had better do something about it at the ballot box. And I'm talking to Democrats, too. You better get these people out of office. Elect somebody else. You want to elect another Democrat? I don't care. Go right ahead. Go right ahead. So what we've seen is we've seen the Department of, quote, justice, unquote, which is an absolute lie. What we've seen now is it's being run. The ringleader is Merrick Garland. And Merrick Garland has been called on by Tom Cotton, Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, to resign or be impeached. Listen to this. Senator Tom Cotton today, I saw this, by the way. Senator Tom Cotton called on Attorney General Merrick Garland to resign in disgrace or face impeachment proceedings on Fox News this morning for not prosecuting protesters at Supreme Court justices' homes. He said today there is an explicit federal law against protesting in front of homes of judges or jurors. Yet again, the feckless and hapless Attorney General Merrick Garland did nothing, even though he had advanced knowledge. He should resign in disgrace. If he won't resign in disgrace, then we should start impeachment proceedings against him in January when we're in control of Congress, because the rule of law in this country must be enforced evenly, irrespective of one's political parties and views. He is completely correct. Completely correct. There's more. How bad is this mess that the Democrat Party's gotten themselves into regarding the assassination attempt of Associate Justice Brett Kavanaugh? It's so bad, one of their own analysts excoriated Democrat leaders for supporting menacing protests outside of Kavanaugh's home. This being reported from Fox News. CNN political analyst David Gregory, formerly the host of Meet the Press on NBC, called the attempted murder, it's an assassination, it's not a murder, called the attempted assassination of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh horrifying and slammed the left for being so hypocritical about blaming the right for mob violence and not addressing their own side's role in motivating such behavior. Speaking to CNN New Day host Brianna Keller, alongside CNN anchor Casey Hunt, Gregory expressed shock and disbelief over the Wednesday arrest of a young man who told law enforcement he was looking to assassinate Justice Kavanaugh over the court's potential dismantling of Roe v. Wade and possible future rulings on the Second Amendment. Gregory declared, and this is horrifying. I mean, activism has its place, of course. Speaking out has its place, but to threaten a Supreme Court justice and his family outside of his home is beyond the pale. It cannot be tolerated. Every politician has an obligation to stand up, condemn this, and do something about it. He then pulled no punches as he hit left-wing politicians over mob violence. And the truth is, a lot of people on the left who are in political power are being hypocritical about this. There's more. David Gregory finding the bottom of his willingness to apologize for Democrat totalitarianism. The willingness to use the Justice Department, the FBI, and any other federal agency they can get their hands on for their political agenda. I say that the government of the United States should operate in the interests of the American people. What I find, and what you find as well, is that they actually operate in spite of the American people. More about Dave Gregory's slamming of Democrat leaders on CNN next. This is The Wells Report. Dirt Bike, I want you to leave, please. I want you to leave the discourse. You're trolling. Stop. Just go away. Okay? Who should use the same energy to protect SCOTUS judges? No, actually, Dirt Bike, I've been trolling for 50 years. Once again, you simply cannot get your facts straight. And I haven't been trolling. I haven't been trolling at all. I've been respectful. And I've been caring about the people who listen to this broadcast, and I listen to them whether I agree with them or not. And if you don't believe me, ask Isaac. I've been right hundreds of times, if not thousands of times, Dirt Bike. You don't have any idea what you're talking about. Clueless. Absolutely clueless. Thanks, Isaac. Let me know what you think about the hearings. Let me know what you think about the hearings tomorrow. Okay, buddy? Take good care. Thanks for joining us. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We are talking a little bit about a CNN analyst who is more than a CNN political analyst. His name is David Gregory. He was the former host of Meet the Press on NBC. And I believe that maybe his need to be a journalist was at odds with the propagandist ideology of NBC, which is why he is now a CNN political analyst as opposed to someone who should be doing something more as a journalist, in my humble opinion. What he said is he said that he was horrified and slammed the left for being hypocritical about blaming the right for mob violence and not addressing their own side's role in motivating such behavior. It's horrifying. I mean, activism has its place, of course. Speaking out has its place. But to threaten a Supreme Court justice and his family outside his home is beyond the pale. Cannot be tolerated. Every politician has an obligation to stand up, condemn this, and do something about it. The truth is, there are a lot of people on the left who are in political power that are being hypocritical about this. He then said this. He slammed the left for constantly going after former President Donald Trump and right-wing violence while at the same time applauding protesters attempting to scare their conservative political opponents outside their homes. Quote, they lecture us all the time about the excesses of the right, including Donald Trump on January 6th, fomenting mob violence, and yet they're out there countenancing, as they have with statements before, that it's okay to stand outside these people's homes, unquote. And so Breonna Keller then played a clip from an early May White House press briefing where then Press Secretary Jen Psaki in the White House refused to officially discourage protests outside Justice's home in the wake of the leaked Roe v. Wade draft opinion. Psaki did maintain that they should be peaceful, just like Donald Trump did when it came to the January 6th insurrection. She also played a clip of Senator Chuck Schumer shrugging off the dangers of protesters outside his home, saying, there are protests 3-4 times a week outside my house, and invited Gregory to comment. The political analyst agreed, peacefully protesting is great, but that's not what's happening here. The problem is, yes, peaceful protests, but what's happening? I mean, go back to, Bill Clinton's admonition about right-wing radio. Quote, be careful on whose ears these messages fall. Gregory continued, asserting that being outside Justice's home is a different ballgame. Quote, you go out somebody's house, that's menacing. And where there are children who are not protected by security. The justices are, their families are not. They're going off to school in the morning. It's intimidating. He then spoke about the attempted murder incident, saying, quote, then you can have an instance here where you apparently have someone who, by any measure, appears not to be mentally well and talking about suicidal ideation and turning himself in. But this is what can happen when you have this kind of intense, incendiary atmosphere. All three pundits spent some time briefly discussing a bill pending being passed in the U.S. House of Representatives that would set up protection for the justices and their families. Casey Hunt expressed curiosity whether the bill would pass prior to the imminent Roe v. Wade decision. GOP lawmakers have slammed House Democrats for stalling the bill in the wake of the arrest of the armed suspect. Hunt agreed with Gregory's initial assessment, saying the peaceful protests are part of being American, but there's a responsibility for people in leadership positions to talk to people who believe in them and who elected them about where is the line and where we should be drawing that line, especially when we're seeing political violence seep into more and more of our conversations. She then concluded, if you want to show up at the Supreme Court and protest, maybe that's the place to do it. That's clearly not where Democrat leaders are right now. I think it's because they are trying to rally their base. More rally their base instincts. This is awful. Absolutely awful. David Gregory is completely correct. He is completely correct. Then there's this. I often react to the garbage being thrown around by the scurrilous nuts on The View. Now, when I say that, that's just my opinion. You know, they think they're right. Okay, that's fine. Whoopi Goldberg says that both sides are guilty of incendiary rhetoric like Schumer's against Kavanaugh and, quote, must be more careful. Huh. Now, I'm trying to think of a situation where some right-wing leader said that it's okay to go and peacefully protest. Oh, wait, I know one. Donald Trump. But after two failed impeachments, we now have a third impeachment going on right now, and that's going to hit the air tonight. Here's what Whoopi said. The View co-host said today that both sides were guilty of rhetoric similar to Senator Chuck Schumer's about Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch in 2020. Goldberg noted that Schumer apologized for saying that justices will pay the price and he shouldn't have used those exact words, adding that they would face political consequences. In this climate, don't we all have to take a beat and really pay attention from both sides? Because we're both guilty of it. Both sides are guilty of doing this, of speaking, and then some crazy stuff happens. And you're reminded there are folks out there, who are listening to what you say. There are consequences to what you say, and you should be more careful. You think? Co-host Joy Behar then pivoted to Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and criticized him for demanding the House pass security protection for Supreme Court justices. Why? Why is that? Why won't they pass a bill to protect Supreme Court justices and their families? It's because they want them hurt. That's why. That is the long and short of it. They want these justices to be attacked. Why? I'll tell you why. Because if this clown had been actually successful, then Joe Biden would be able to nominate an associate justice for the Supreme Court. Nancy Pelosi is hoping that maybe another nutcase will go ahead and follow through on Chuck Schumer's points of view. and get both Gorsuch and Kavanaugh so that Joe Biden could pick 2 more Supreme Court justices, and thus destroying the Supreme Court forever. Our claim that McConnell is worried about security for members of the High Court, not about passing legislation in response for the shootings in Buffalo, New York, and Uvalde, Texas. Well, here's what you do. Regarding Buffalo, New York, open up the capability of citizens to arm themselves and then defend themselves. Make it possible for people in New York to carry a concealed weapon. Get rid of all the gun laws that stop regular law-abiding Americans from being victimized by crazy criminals with weapons who don't care about gun law. And as far as Uvalde, talk about misdirection. Misdirection is that nobody in Washington, D.C. has ever seen fit to actually make schools safe. They are unsafe. They are unsafe today. They'll be unsafe tomorrow. They will be unsafe until somebody in Washington, D.C. thinks it's more important to protect kids than to be able to use the slaughter of kids as a way to make America a more totalitarian society. And that's what's going on. Make no mistake, pass this bill to protect the Supreme Court justices and their families because she wants them rattled enough or dead enough so that Joe Biden can pick Supreme Court justices. That tells you just how far gone the Democrat Party is. Gone. I've been saying for years that what we need to do is stop electing Democrats at any level for any reason until the party regains its senses, until it decides to be an American political party instead of a leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American, fascist, totalitarian party. Anna Navarro, who I guess who's on The View, is to try to come up with some sort of opposing viewpoint, said this: we should condemn, not condone, any violence against any public official, whether we agree with them or not. It should not just be the Supreme Court. There are also other federal judges. There was one in New Jersey, Judge Salas, whose son got killed. A guy with a list of judges that he was planning on assassinating walks up to her door, knocks on it. Her son opens the door. He shoots him in the head. Dead. Then co-host Sonny Hostin interrupted and noticed that Justice Sotomayor was threatened after Justice Esther Salas' son was killed during an armed attack in their home by a disgruntled attorney. You didn't hear Mitch McConnell wanting to pass any legislation then, she said. Oh, really? Referring to Judge Kavanaugh's would-be murder, Hostin declared that the reason he showed up to Justice Kavanaugh's home is he was upset about the leak, the Supreme Court opinion leak, not about what Schumer said 2 years ago, then slammed McConnell for politicizing the event. Excuse me? Behar said they have to pull something out of their behinds. Navarro added that nobody pays attention to Schumer and what Schumer said 2 days ago. I'm sorry. The enemy gets a vote. An armed man was arrested near Kavanaugh's house in Maryland. He was carrying a knife, pepper spray, and a gun, a crowbar. The would-be assailant made violent threats against Kavanaugh, according to the criminal complaint. The suspect told police he was upset about the leak of a recent Supreme Court draft decision regarding the right to an abortion, as well as the recent school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. He thought that Kavanaugh would side with the Second Amendment decisions to loosen gun control. That's what he said. But what we had was an assassin showing up at an associate justice of the Supreme Court's house. Pelosi does not want to pass legislation to cover the behinds of those and their families. Oh, if there's a shooting in Uvalde, Texas, get weapons out of the hands of law-abiding Americans, by golly, she'll pass that immediately. It only took a day. Funeral's not complete in Uvalde, Texas, but that bill got passed immediately. The Crazy View people bring up Sotomayor and the threat that was against her, a threat. Did any assassin show up at her door? No. If an assassin had shown up at her door, Nancy Pelosi would have passed that bill immediately. Absolutely immediately. We cannot continue like this. We cannot have an anti-American mess. Can't have it. What we have to do is we have to find some way of getting these people out of office. We have one. It's called an election. But do you have confidence in American elections, especially on a national level at this moment? Yes or no? Do you believe your vote gets counted? Yes or no? Once again, I'm not saying that your vote is or isn't counted. I'm asking whether you believe your vote is getting counted. I'm sure that there are an awful lot of people that are wondering, does it matter if I vote? Does it matter? Well, it will at some point. And by the way, am I talking like some right-wing Republican flack? No. I'm talking to you as an American constitutionalist. That's how I'm talking to you. This perfect storm of leftist corruption has made it possible in the United States for people who are not U.S. citizens to vote in elections in the U.S. Currently local ones. They're local elections, but that's happening. These people have steadfastly rejected any attempt whatsoever to put voting in the United States in the hands of American registered voters. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 844. It's not 844. It's going to be, I have the number, by the way. I do have the number. You want to know what it is? It's 817-379-2027. No, 2072. That's what it is. Yeah, I've got the number. It just doesn't work. Back with more in just a moment. Funny. I think that's wrong. I think that's what's wrong here. See, what's next? Rejoin. That's wrong. I got to change that log. I have to change the log because that one's wrong. Okay. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I want to bring something up to you while we have a moment, and that is this. A lot of people worry about the leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American thuggery that's currently going on with people disguised as Democrats. And all I can tell you is that what you need to keep in mind is that these people will certainly defeat themselves. They always have. They always will. Okay? They always have. They always will. Indeed, they are defeating themselves even now. Even now. And what we're going to do is we're going to watch these people immolate. It's actually happening. Former Barack Obama campaign manager Jim Messina attacked Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for her recent endorsement of a candidate against the Democrat Congressional Campaign Committee chair. AOC made headlines this week for endorsing New York State Senator Alessandra Biaggi, who is primarying current DCC head Representative Sean Patrick Maloney for the New York District 17 in the U.S. House. Maloney is considered a well-connected Democrat. Some, including Ocasio-Cortez, consider Biaggi a progressive alternative. Messina criticized AOC's decision shortly afterwards, claiming this kind of infighting could lead to Democrats losing control of Congress. Actually, anti-Americanism on the part of the Democrat Party is going to cause the Democrats to lose control of Congress. This is so counterproductive, he said. The Supreme Court is about to outlaw abortion. We could lose both houses, so we're going to focus our time running against each other. Now we're primarying committed progressives because why? If we lose the House, it's going to be because of dumb S-word like this. There's a dumb S-word out there, all right. Ocasio-Cortez did not respond to the tweet. She continued to voice her support for Biaggi on her Twitter account. Maloney, who's been serving as the head of the DCCC since 2021, responded to Fox News Digital by voicing disagreement with AOC's endorsement. Quote, I respect Representative Ocasio-Cortez and have worked with her on a number of policy matters, including as a co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. But on her endorsement, we're going to have to agree to disagree. This election comes down to voters in New York 17, and I'm honored to have received overwhelming support locally, including endorsements from nearly 40 elected leaders and Democrat Party committees, none of which have anything to do whatsoever with AOC. Maloney came under fire in May for choosing to run for representative in New York's 17th district rather than the usual 18th district, following new redistricting maps that made his old district more competitive. The switch originally pitted him against progressive incumbent Representative Mondaire Jones, before Jones moved his campaign to New York's 10th. Biaggi was a proponent of defund the police, a sharp critic of former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. The New York primaries will be held on August 23rd. They're beginning to fight with each other. That will continue. These people will defeat themselves. All you have to do is give them time. Man, it's tough. It's really tough waiting for their eventual pathological mess. I mean, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. But boy, they're doing damage in the meantime, aren't they? They just don't like the United States. They think the United States is just a terrible racist country. And why do they say that? Well, because they use it to further their political initiatives. We have gone in this nation since I've been alive. We have gone from recognizing and all but doing away with racism. We've gone from there to exploiting racism at every turn for political effect. What does that mean to you? The manipulation of the people being castigated is something that we, the people, are most certainly not. And yet, we still find ourselves listening to these people and letting their constant din of how terrible the country is actually make things happen in this nation. Why? Well, because the mainstream media plays along. They do. They simply play along. And that is as deeply ingrained as the electrons making their evil work possible. It's the way I see it. My name's Wells. That's my opinion. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. See you in a bit. I'll be right back. Stay right there. Don't go anywhere. It's almost like I time it down to the event. Amazing. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact. We report the facts. We draw contrasts between the news and the facts because as we have watched America's media progress in this wannabe totalitarian, constant drum-beating din, what we see a very small number of people coalescing around this leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American mess that they want to foist on the people of the United States. They will lose. However, right now, it's painful to watch. It will be exquisitely painful tonight when a kangaroo congressional committee without any kind of objective opposing viewpoint will take to the air tonight, courtesy of that very same media, in an effort to denigrate a former president of the United States. A president they could not get rid of because of fraudulent impeachment proceedings, times two, and all this is an extension of the last failed impeachment of this president. That's going to happen tonight. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to watch it because it's my job. But believe me, I don't want to. It's like holding your face in front of a campfire. It singes and burns to listen to these people trying to destroy our nation with their willing handmaidens of the mainstream media. And I dare say that one of the reasons you're listening to this broadcast right now is because you can't find the news anywhere else. Want to run through a few things here. New polling is showing support for an assault weapons ban in the United States has hit an all-time low. A Quinnipiac University poll conducted last week published Tuesday, 50% of registered voters do support a nationwide ban on semi-automatic long guns compared to 45% who oppose. That is the lowest level of support since February of 2013 when Quinnipiac began asking the question. The highest level of support for that ban was 67% in February of 2018, days after the Parkland school shooting that left 17 people dead. Nearly a decade after the school shooting at Sandy Hook, in the midst of raging partisanship and emotional debate, the assault weapon maintains a foothold. As calls for outlaws of ownership hit their lowest level. This according to Quinnipiac University polling analyst Tim Malloy. The poll does show that Americans do support some form of gun control, including 74% of poll respondents signaling support for raising the minimum age to buy any gun from 18 to 21. I don't know that I have any problems with that. I want to hear the debate. And by the way, in case you don't know, a debate is both sides of the question. Both sides of the question coming together for a reasoned discussion, as opposed to an unreasonable discussion in a biased and completely hypocritical proceeding. According to the poll, 57% of Americans support stricter gun laws in the United States, which is an increase from the Quinnipiac poll in November that showed 45%. See, these polls are everywhere. The vast majority of Democrats support stricter gun control, 91%. Only 32% of Republicans feel the same way. Background checks are supported by 92% of Americans, regardless of party, according to the poll, which makes sense. Poll also shows that 42% of Americans expect politicians in Washington, D.C. to act on reducing gun violence this year. 54% do not believe that they will. In a speech to the nation, following the Uvalde shooting last week, which involved an AR-15 rifle, President Joe Biden called for a reinstatement of the federal assault weapons ban that was passed in 1994 and expired in 2004. He also called for raising the purchase age from 18 to 21. By the way, something positive for raising that age is that while I think that 21-year-olds are far more advanced in their thought than 18-year-olds, I still believe that 18-year-olds and even younger should be able to carry those weapons if they choose. Mike Renouy, who's a dear friend of the Wells Report, says that it should be on a state-by-state basis. That's correct. Because I maintain my call for the federal government to do less and less and less and less than they do now. The states should make that decision. I agree. I do believe that kids ought to be able to have access, and I'm saying kids, I think I got my first real weapon in my hands when I was 14, 15, somewhere in that vicinity, because I was on the rifle team of my high school. No, I had fired weapons long before that. Enjoyed every minute of it, in fact. It's fun sport. I love competitive shooting. Ooh-wee. The concentration and skill it takes to be able to put a round into the very center of a bullseye is joyous. Now, note I'm discussing a target, a printed target on a range somewhere down there. I'm not talking about a target of a human being. I'm talking about sport shooting. And all the rifles that you can use for sport shooting are also all the rifles you use for hunting, all the rifles you use for simple recreation. When you start picking and choosing which ones you're going to allow Americans to have, you start infringing on the Second Amendment of the United States. And these infringements aren't just about the Second Amendment. A gubernatorial candidate in Michigan was arrested by the FBI because he was on the grounds of the Capitol January 6th, practicing the First Amendment. He said, "This is war." They arrested him today in light of the fact that Nancy Pelosi then surrounded the Capitol with razor wire and fencing and 26,000 troops that had nothing to do because nobody showed up. Nobody showed up. They were all carrying real weapons of war. They were carrying real assault weapons instead of rifles that look like them. Assault weapon is a weapon that can be fired fully automatic and semi-automatic. Fully automatic rifles, except in the hands of a few collectors and people with special licenses, are illegal in this nation already. Semi-automatic rifles are part and parcel of the American experience. And oh, by the way, the reason the Second Amendment exists in the first place is to protect us against the governmental tyranny we're seeing right this minute. At the very least, leftist progressives, anti-gun leftist progressives, are baiting the bulldog. The American people have not risen to that bait. President Biden added the country also needs to strengthen background checks, enact safe storage, red flag laws, repeal the immunity for the gun manufacturers, which is an absolute no-go, address the mental health crisis, all for that. Biden said untruthfully that he respects the culture, the tradition, the concerns of lawful gun owners. At the same time, the Second Amendment, like all other rights, is not absolute. In this current political climate, the Second Amendment should be absolute. The simple case of the matter is that I have served in the United States military. As a matter of fact, I'm currently serving in the United States military as a Texas State Guard soldier. None of the things I say have anything to do with the Texas State Guard or the Texas Military Department. None of them. This is just my opinion. And I am very, very sure that regardless of what these political idiots believe, they're simply not going to be able to call out the National Guard of the United States and expect them to fire on their own neighbors. They're just not going to do it. But they don't know that, which is why Nancy Pelosi, after the fact, had National Guardsmen, 26,000 in fact, surround the Capitol. What is ironic and terrible about that is that she had that authorization from President Trump days before the January 16th incursion. Didn't do anything about it. Didn't like the optics of it. Didn't want to do that. These politicians are amazingly out of touch with all of this. That was brought to light today. Representative Jackie Speier of California, she's a Democrat. She claimed yesterday she's the only member of the U.S. House that is a victim of gun violence. Well, she forgot a couple of others, notably Representative Steve Scalise. I believe I'm the only member of this House that's a victim of gun violence. My body is riddled with bullets. I have a divot in my leg the size of a football. I've got skin grafts all over all over parts of her body. I live with that every day. Speier survived 5 gunshot wounds after being ambushed by People's Temple members during the 1978 Jonestown Massacre. Her Republican colleague, Steve Scalise, was shot during a 2017 congressional baseball game by a left-wing domestic terrorist who was targeting Republicans specifically, at the behest of Democrat Party leadership. They both sustained life-threatening injuries from the shootings. Speier said that she called on Republicans to support gun control legislation after a spate of mass shootings rocked the country. A victim of gun violence is traumatized over and over again. I implore my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. If we had a 737 that crashed every month for 12 months in this country, we would do something about it. Well, we have all these school shootings, and yet schools are open to the level that somebody who's a complete nutbag can walk right in with an AR-15. Why is that? I'll tell you why. Because politicians like Ms. Speier apparently believe that they'd rather have dead kids in a school shooting than actually have safe schools so the kids don't have to worry about getting shot. That's how we stop school shootings. We make it impossible for gunmen to enter schools. People like that should die within several feet of a locked door. Or they should die walking through the hallway with a teacher who has been empowered and trained to protect those children to shoot him in the face. Well, we don't have that, do we? Because like most politics in the United States, we'd rather have the issue than the solution. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You're listening to The Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We have other issues to talk about, like, for example, strangely enough, Biden administration officials are now warning about how there might be a nuclear crisis involving Iran now. Really? Yeah, I guess that idea of empowering Iran to make a nuclear weapon is not working right. Hi. Let's see here. Let me see what I can do about this. Let's see here. Test 1, 2. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is shortly going to be 817-379-2072. It's not set up yet because even though I arranged for it weeks ago, Frontier Communications hasn't been able to get somebody out here to actually install it. It's truly annoying. It's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. But what do? You just wait, I guess. Yeah, you just wait, I guess. By the way, while we're talking about shootings, 3 people are dead after someone opened fire inside a manufacturing facility in western Maryland. Why is it that all these shootings keep happening in places where there are a surfeit of gun laws? Governor Larry Hogan reported that 3 people have lost their lives. There will likely be more. Deputies responded to the active shooting at Columbia Machine on Bickle Road at Smithsburg around 2:30 this afternoon. The Washington County Sheriff's Office said there are multiple fatalities. Hogan later confirmed at a news conference that 3 people were killed. The suspect was shot and injured during a confrontation with a Maryland State Police trooper. The sheriff's office said. Shooter was hospitalized. The condition of both the trooper and the shooter are unclear. The trooper suffered a minor injury. Smithsburg is in a remote area near the Maryland-Pennsylvania border, a few miles from Hagerstown, Maryland. Just go ahead and we'll watch that story and see what happened with that as soon as we know. CNN is reporting the U.S. Secretary of State said today that a decision by Iran will further complicate efforts to salvage the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. You know, the deal with former Secretary of State John F. incredibly stupid Kerry. Suddenly, it seems as though the Iranians just don't want to abide by any kind of agreement whatsoever. Here's the latest. It appears as though Iran wants to remove cameras that monitor the nuclear program there. Secretary of State Blinken says this could lead to, quote, a deepening nuclear crisis and further economic and political isolation for Iran, unquote. All of which disappear as soon as they have a functioning nuclear warhead. All those sanctions, economic and political isolation, that all vanishes as soon as they become a nuclear power. Followed shortly thereafter by the complete disappearance of the country of Iran, because Israel cannot stand by and wait for an Iranian nuclear device to explode in Israel. They will make a preemptive strike, and then Katie bar the door. The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency said earlier today that Iran will basically remove all cameras installed under the 2015 nuclear deal after the country was censured earlier this week by the IAEA's Board of Governors for not fully cooperating with a nuclear watchdog. In a statement, Blinken accused Iran of threatening, quote, further nuclear provocations, unquote, and making further reductions of transparency. The top U.S. diplomat called such steps counterproductive and would further complicate our efforts to return to full implementation of the 2015 nuclear deal, known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. The only outcome of such a path will be a deepening nuclear crisis and further economic and political isolation for Iran. We continue to press Iran to choose diplomacy and de-escalation instead. Iran's move to remove the cameras could jeopardize the 2015 nuclear deal, which put verifiable limits on Iran's nuclear program designed to prevent the country from obtaining a nuclear weapon. It's actually just the opposite. The head of the IAEA said earlier today that Iran will basically remove all cameras installed. The idea that whatever was beyond the Comprehensive Safeguards Agreement will be removed, that this is the principle, we now have to see, said IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi, who told journalists at the quarterly Board of Governors meeting in Vienna. Biden administration officials, by the way, are not going that far. Oh, this is very unwelcome. We'll make everything more difficult, but we would not go as far as to say that this is the beginning of the end, said a senior administration official. State Department spokesman noted to CNN that Iran has not yet taken the steps to remove all 27 cameras that are being used to monitor nuclear facilities. But that if Iran does follow through, it will create complications returning to the deal. Grossi told CNN that it's technically impossible to have a nuclear agreement with Iran if it curtails access to the facilities by deactivating cameras. We have a number of means to verify Iran's activities in a number of areas related to the JCPOA. While Iran starts curtailing these accesses at some point, the JCPOA was to be revived. The participants need to have a baseline, a necessary amount to know what it is that Iran has or does not have in order for us to verify. That was Grossi speaking in an interview with CNN's Becky Anderson on Thursday, today. If you don't have that, it's technically impossible to have an agreement. Talks to revive the deal, abandoned by the U.S. under the Trump administration, broke off in March without an agreement. The Biden administration, however, is hoping to salvage the 2015 deal. Secretary Blinken today blamed Iran for the fact that there is not yet an agreement to revive the deal, continued to express an openness to salvaging the nuclear agreement. Why? It doesn't make any difference what you agree to with Iranians in the first place. They'll simply do what they've always done. Set aside the agreement in favor of their own nationalist nuclear power. We better stop playing with these people. Why? Because they might use one of these weapons on us? No. We better stop these people because if they don't, Israel's going to obliterate the country. They have to. The government of Iran is on record as saying that if they have a nuclear weapon, they will use it. There's no reason for Israel not to believe them. Just as there is no reason for us to believe that Iran won't use them as well. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for being with us. What is the JCPOA? Stick around. You'll find out on the Wells Report. Okay, so getting back to the chat. Let's see here. Plenty of responsible 18-year-olds who haven't shot up a school, correct? They need to bring competitive shooting back to high school. Kids can learn responsible gun ownership if they choose, correct? Lip service from Botus. Who's Botus? Do you mean POTUS? Thanks, by the way, for the tip on the Maryland shooting. I saw it before I went on the air, but I didn't have a chance to put it in. So I just took your kind suggestion and did so. They killed all the shooters on the spot, never mentioned their name or showed their face. It would help. Correct. Just got here, says J. Randall Dupape. Hey, J. Randall. Let's see. This is what having a weak American president does. I'm not surprised Iran is unconcerned with our reaction. Oh, bonehead of the United States. Yeah, that's funny. BOTUS. I love that. This is the Wells Report. Thanks for being here today. I sincerely appreciate it. We bring you the news, we bring you the facts, we make commentary, and then we debate the commentary. That is the secret sauce. And I'm glad you're feeling saucy today. By the way, before we go on to something else, got a couple of different things to talk about. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, known as the Iran nuclear deal, is an agreement on the Iran nuclear program reached in Vienna on July 14th, 2015. There were 6 countries involved. They're called the P5+1. China, France, Russia, United Kingdom, United States, and Germany, along with the European Union. As soon as the United States left the agreement, Iran stopped abiding by it. And that decision was made by President Donald Trump because he was sure he could negotiate a better deal. Of course, he was trying to fight 2 impeachments. I suppose if Nancy Pelosi hadn't decided to interfere with the presidency of Donald Trump, and if there had been less sabotage of President Trump's presidency, we'd probably have a better deal with Iran, which is something that I am convinced is the only thing that will save Iran from disappearing in a nuclear inferno. It's like watching a moth before a flame. It just can't help itself. Benjamin Netanyahu, the former prime minister of the country of Israel, called Iran the world's first suicide country. He is completely correct in that assessment. So in case you're wondering, they came up with this wonderful deal that was supposedly going to keep Iran from having a nuclear weapon. It does not. It does not. Does not require them to. And that is a mistake. They will have a nuclear weapon and Israel will act. It will happen relatively quickly, and you won't believe what you see when you see pictures of what's left of Tehran. You just won't believe it. Let's move on. The President of the United States, speaking of energy, a little less powerful than nuclear weapons, but still energy nonetheless, has come up with this magnificent idea. He's planning on requiring electric vehicle charging stations every 50 miles on federal highways. The Biden will take another step in its campaign to transition more Americans to electric vehicles when it releases proposed standards for a network of charging stations across the country. President Joe Biden pledged to have 500,000 public charging stations for electric vehicles in place by 2030. The administration is providing more than $5 billion to states over the next 5 years to build a network of charging stations along the nation's interstates. The proposed standards, which will be published next week in the Federal Register, dictate that a charging station be located every 50 miles along the interstate and no more than 1 mile off the highway. Stations would be required to maintain a minimum number and type of chargers capable of serving multiple customers. Stations would be prohibited from requiring drivers to have a membership or be part of a club to use the chargers. Real-time information on pricing and location would have to be available for motorists using a GPS app to better plan their trip and also make it possible to spy on where they're going. Federal Highway Administration's proposed standards will apply to federally funded charging stations in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico. The goal is to ensure a seamless system of charging stations that can be used by motorists no matter what car they drive, where they live, or how they pay. Everyone should be able to find a working charging station when and where they need one without worrying about having to pay more or getting worse service because of where they live. By the way, some of these charging stations will be powered by what? That's right. Diesel generators. Just can't get away from those fossil fuels, huh? Just can't do it. This is boneheaded, especially when the Wall Street Journal is doing something like saying, oh, by the way, yeah, there are probably going to be electricity blackouts all across the country this summer. Not good. Yeah, if you're going to buy electric anything, do not buy an electric car. May I suggest that you buy an electric generator? That's what we've done here at the at Fort Wells Keller, which is my name for my house. Right? Mike and we ask, by the way, will the government be running these chargers, these charging stations? Don't know. We'll see. Now for something completely different. I don't know that you've been paying attention to this or not. I have been paying attention to it peripherally, because I'm a big fan of brilliant golf. There is another group besides the Professional Golfers of America, the PGA, trying to lure some of the greatest golfers in the world to play in events called LIV Golf. It's backed by the Saudi Arabians. Okay. Yeah. So the LIV Golf Series is an invitational only event. Okay. Six-time major golf champion Phil Mickelson will participate in the inaugural LIV Golf Tournament at the Centurion Club near London, along with two-time major winner Dustin Johnson, who earlier this week resigned from the PGA Tour. Mickelson, who won the last of the three Masters jackets in 2010, has not played since the controversial comments about the Saudi Arabian-funded events were published earlier this year by his biographer. He was quoted from a 2021 interview with author Jan Shipnuck for his upcoming book, Phil, the Rip-Roaring and Unauthorized Biography of Golf's Most Colorful Superstar, as saying that he would consider joining the proposed Super League because it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reshape how the PGA Tour operates. Shipnuck quoted Mickelson as saying disparaging things about Saudi Arabia's human rights record and asserting the kingdom killed journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Mickelson said in February he would take some time away after golf after being criticized for the commentary. Mickelson tweeted in a statement, I'm thrilled to begin with LIV Golf and I appreciate everyone involved. I also intend to play the majors. He will. Greg Norman is the CEO of LIV Golf. He said in part that Mickelson strengthens an exciting field for London, and we're proud to launch a new era for golf. Our international series qualifiers have earned incredible opportunities to compete in LIV's new golf format, and I'm eager to watch all of them tee it up. Mickelson was apologetic in a statement. I want to again apologize to the many people I've offended and hurt with my comments a few months ago. I've made mistakes in my career and some of the things I've said and done. I've been engaged and intentional in continued therapy and feel healthy and much more at peace. I realize I still have a long way to go, but I'm embracing the work ahead. CNN reached out to LIV Golf for just about how much money Mickelson was going to earn for participating. It's going to be substantial. 2017 Masters winner Sergio Garcia will also play in the London event, along with Lee Westwood, Ian Poulter, two-time major winner Martin Kamer, and Kevin Na. It's hard to speak on what the consequences might be, but I've resigned my membership of the tour, and that's the plan for now, said Dustin Johnson at a press conference at the Centurion Club. The 37-year-old will no longer be eligible for the Ryder Cup, remains optimistic about featuring in future events of the biennial competition against Europe, having been on the winning side twice in 5 appearances. The Ryder Cup is unbelievable. It's meant a lot to me, but ultimately I decided this was the best for me and my family. All things are subject to change, and hopefully at some point it will change, and I'll get a chance to do that all again. Yeah. The PGA, for its part, has officially suspended anyone taking part in LIV golf events. PGA Commissioner Jay Monahan announced that all golfers playing in the Breakaway Series have been notified they are suspended and otherwise no longer eligible to participate in PGA Tour golf tournaments. As you know, the players listed below did not receive the necessary conflicting event and media rights releases, or did not apply for the releases at all, and their participation in the Saudi Golf League LIV golf event is in violation of our tournament regulations. The same fate holds true for other players who participate in future Saudi Golf League events in violation of the regulations. Players who have resigned their memberships will be removed from FedEx points, the FedEx Tour, FedEx Cup points, when the RBC Canadian Open scores are posted on Sunday. The 17 golfers listed, including past major winners Dustin Johnson, Phil Mickelson, Sergio Garcia, will not be permitted to play in PGA Tour tournaments as non-members via a sponsor exemption or any other eligibility category. Mickelson, who previously held a lifetime eligibility to the PGA Tour, said he didn't plan on quitting the tour as he had earned the right to participate as he is a lifetime membership, which he's earned and worked hard for. As far as what happens now for the PGA Tour, Monahan added in a statement, you probably will have more questions. What's next? Can these players come back? Can they eventually play in PGA Tour champions? Trust we're prepared to deal with those questions. We'll approach them in the same way we have this entire process, by being transparent and respecting the PGA Tour regulations that you helped establish. These players made their choice for their own financial-based reasons, but they can't demand the same PGA Tour member benefits, considerations, opportunities, and platform as you. That expectation disrespects you, our fans and partners. You've made a different choice, which is to abide by the tournament regulations you agreed to when you accomplished the dream of earning a PGA Tour card. More importantly, to compete as a part of the preeminent organization in the world of professional golf. The LIV Golf Series is backed by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, a sovereign wealth fund chaired by Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and the man who a U.S. intelligence report named as responsible for approving the operation that led to the 2018 murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The tour consists of 8 events across the world. It begins today in London. Greg Norman, the team-based series, runs from June to October with the aim, it says, to holistically improve the health of professional golf on a global scale and unlock the sport's untapped potential. Saudi Arabia has pledged to award $250 million in total prize money. Each of the first 7 events will have a total purse of $25 million, with $20 million split between the individual players, the remaining $5 million shared between the top 3 teams at the end of each week. Ahead of the first event in London, the 12 teams were announced, as well as their captain. On Tuesday, captains selected the rest of their teams in a draft format akin to the NFL and NBA drafts. Unlike typical golfing events, the London event is over 3 days, not 4. The 48-man field begins with a shotgun start all at the same time in hopes of being more engaging, action-packed in their style of play. Competing in a traditional stroke play format, the lowest scorer will be the winner. LIV Golf responded to the PGA Tour's decision to suspend players by saying today's announcement by the PGA Tour is vindictive. It deepens the divide between the tour and its members. It's troubling that the tour, an organization dedicated to creating opportunities for golfers to play the game, is the entity blocking golfers from playing. It's certainly not the last word on the topic. The era of free agency is beginning, as we are proud to take a full field of players joining us in London and beyond. When it comes right down to it, I do believe that the PGA is overstepping its bounds. I have long said that if you are an entity doing business in the United States, then you should abide by the Constitution of the United States. And what is happening here is the PGA is enforcing a restraint of trade. They are also baiting the monopoly exemption bulldog. Like major sports in the United States, major professional sports, there is an exemption for what is a de facto monopoly. To do this is vindictive. These guys should be able to play whatever events they play. They are not property of the PGA. The PGA apparently believes that they are. And that's not a good thing. Just because you have a PGA Tour card does not mean you need to be a vassal of that organization and nothing more. You should be able to do as you choose. That's the American way. And I don't know why the PGA would want to stop that. I don't. It's disturbing. You know, I just want to see the best golfers in the world compete on a level that is breathtaking. The more you know about golf, the more you realize just how incredible these guys are. And they are assuredly incredible. There is a lot of money out there, and Saudi Arabians have it, and they should be able to spend it as they choose. It is my hope that everybody put their egos down and get back to the business of brilliant golf played brilliantly in a beautiful setting around the world. This is the Wells Report, back with more in just a moment. According to the news article, Mike, there will be multiple chargers. But, I mean, how's that going to work? Why has it been such a busy day, Ms. Yvonne Field? Why? I'm glad you're back. We missed you. Will the government pay for $20,000 replacement batteries these electric cars will need every 5 years? No. No, this electric car thing isn't going to last 5 years. You have a new employee that you're training. Well, God bless them. Could not have a better instructor. Good. Give her my best, please. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. What you may or may not know about me is that I have had a love affair with the game of baseball since I was 9. What is that? 38, 39 years, something like that? Oh, stop it. When I was a player, I was awful. As I got better, I was able to pull off some remarkable plays, get some amazing hits, throw some amazing games, strike out the side in the final inning in a few games. I've been blessed by this game. And when it finally got to the time when I was 47 years old to hang up the spikes, I started coaching. to give back to the game and fell in love with baseball all over again. As a part of being a coach, I coached for a couple of years and then decided that what I would do is I would become an umpire. I went to some umpire schools and really enjoyed. Parents got completely out of hand. You know, arguing balls and strikes is pretty much taken care of by the umpires. When the coaches start doing it, what you end up doing is you end up throwing them out of the game. But you really can't do that with the spectators. Although technically an umpire can remove a spectator from a game. Or in the most dire of circumstances, declare a forfeit for an offending team. You don't do that, but it's on the table. Umpiring a baseball game is not straightforward. It is not cut and dried. It is not something a machine can do, because actually umpires arbitrate the game. There are two things that happen on a baseball field. What actually and what the umpire believes happened. People say umpires get the calls wrong. Sometimes. But what do you do about an umpire that gets the calls wrong? What do? You play better baseball. If you run a little faster, hit the ball a little harder, make a more accurate throw, umpire doesn't have to do anything. Can't screw it up. In other words, the solution to an umpire that gets it wrong is to not remove the umpire. The solution is to play better baseball. That's why once a year in the United States of America, a world baseball champion is crowned. And nobody anywhere in the world could possibly beat the team that takes home that trophy. Can't do it. That's how good baseball is. Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball, however, is trying to screw itself up. They protected the game during the steroids issue, the steroids era. They protected the game by not allowing guys who took steroids. And I assure you that those work. I assure you that steroids absolutely work. Not going to say how, I just know. But they did protect the game. Guys who use steroids haven't gotten anywhere close to the Hall of Fame. And the reason that they haven't gotten close is because the use of steroids invalidates all the athletic endeavors of all the baseball players that go back 150 years or so. It invalidates all those records. That's what they said. And then what they decided to do was add cameras and appeals. So the coaches could say, well, I don't believe you got that call right, and they'd actually reverse an umpire on the field, which invalidated all those records all the records back that 150 years in the first place. So why not let the guys who use steroids back in the game? It's ridiculous. Well, now they're trying to come up with automated strike zones where you don't need an umpire calling balls and strikes. It's not that simple. It's not that simple. The strike zone moves. It should move. The strike zone moves based on the game, based on the hitter, based on the pitcher. It moves. And that interaction between an umpire and the game that he is arbitrating is one of the greatest things about the sport. It is a self-correcting mechanism. If you don't want the umpire to make a bad call, make a better play. And so Major League Baseball is working this through, and all I can tell you is it's a bad mistake. It is a bad mistake. It is. That's just my opinion. As a longtime lover of baseball, I hope they don't do it. And I hope they knock off this instant replay garbage, too. But I think I'm probably whistling Dixie in the maelstrom on that one. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed today's edition of the Wells Report. We'll be back again tomorrow, God willing, and the river don't rise, for another edition of the Wells Report. Thank you, Miss Yvonne. God bless all y'all. That wasn't a bad show. It was better than yesterday. What a mess yesterday was. Oh, my God. God, that was terrible. Yesterday was horrifying. Horrifying. With the emphasis on fying. I was so stupid. I am telling you, I was so stupid. All right, God bless you. Take good care, and I'll talk to you later, okay? Talk to you tomorrow.